Over the last several months, I've helped many viewers on the channel be able to get a GPU at MSRP and in stock. And I plan to do the same for you today, right before Christmas and the holiday season. So let's get started with our GPU finding guide. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Just smash that like button and subscribe if you want a GPU in your life at some point, or some people sometimes even have more than one if they smash the like button multiple times. Alright, so purpose of today's video is going to be to sort of reiterate what we've been talking about the last several months. I've had so many viewers that have had a lot of luck in finding GPUs, and they've posted back on my previous videos. Sometimes it's not really information that everybody knows. Sometimes people have an idea of how to get GPUs, but unless they get lucky, it's going to be very difficult for them. And of course, we do have the problem of exactly where you're located. For example, some people that are located closer to micro centers or Best Buys will have a much higher chance at getting a GPU. And then other people that are, worldwide and in Europe, I often get comments from people in Europe. Often they really have a very tough time in finding a GPU. It's much more difficult as we may think it is in the United States to be able to find a GPU in stock. And it's not always easy. It's many, many times more difficult to be able to even find one in Europe. Sometimes the problem is they are certainly in stock. You can walk into a local store, maybe in England or Germany, and you'll be able to actually see the GPU, but it's outrageously priced. It's many multiples of what the MSRP should be. So at that point, might as well not be in stock, and you're probably better off going outside and playing some soccer or something like that, or football, as you would know in Europe. So that's definitely still a major problem. So the only thing I can say is, unfortunately, it's still a little bit easier to get GPUs in the US. Actually much easier, even though it does seem difficult for those of us in the US. Compared to other countries, it certainly is a lot more likely that you'll be able to find a GPU in stock, and at least with a price that's a little bit more, more stomachable, a price that's not going to be too crazy high. And then let's clarify something else here by what I mean by MSRP. That's originally the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Now, if we go by Nvidia, for example, the RTX 3000 series, something like an RTX 3080 was supposed to have an MSRP of $699 US. But the problem is, as soon as it turns into a third-party AIB 3080, for example, if Asus is making a Strix or EVGA a 4013, that price naturally is going to be a lot higher than that $699. Some of the 3080s at first went to maybe the 800 range, and slowly they started creeping up until they were well past $1,000. Now, it's not the original MSRP of the Nvidia GPU, but that's sort of the manufacturer's suggested retail price of the third-party AIB. So if I say MSRP, I basically just mean at a price that's not technically a scalper price, even though you may say if you see a 3080 in the store selling for a supposed MSRP of $1,100, you're going to say that's not the Nvidia MSRP. Technically that's correct, but that's the MSRP of that manufacturer, and the prices have gone up because of all the shortage issues, all of the tariffs that we had in early 2021, the expiration of the tariffs, that is. So certainly there have been a lot of reasons for the price increase, and unfortunately you just have to kind of deal with them. The only way to be able to still get an original MSRP, like we're talking about the Nvidia, $699 for a 3080, $499 for a 3070, it's still possible to get that, but very, very rare. That's going to be specifically in the US when Best Buy does a drop of the Founders Edition, which are made directly by Nvidia. So when those drop, those are still the original MSRP price. Anything else is going to be a higher, more inflated MSRP price. Traditionally, the third-party coolers, like if you get an Asus Strix, you're always going to be paying more than the Founders Edition Nvidia GPU, but it just so happened that now the prices have climbed even more considerably than, previously we would have ever had. For example, if you picked up a 3090 Founders Edition, you're going to pay $1499 if you're lucky enough to get it at the MSRP. If you want to get an Asus Strix, chances are you're going to be around the $22 to $2,300 range, and that's going to be the price in the store, the MSRP price from Asus itself. We're not even talking about a scalper or anything like that. So as you can see, that's at least a $700 to $800 price difference between what really technically is the same GPU. You could argue the Asus Strix may perform a little better in some aspects, which in my opinion, the Founders Edition is actually the better GPU in many cases, but even if it does, $800 for the same GPU basically is not worth that difference. You could see maybe $100 to $200. Maybe you want the aesthetic, maybe you want RGB. A few $100 maybe would be fair, but $700 or $800 you can buy an entirely new GPU, and that should be a price difference that entitles you to a new class of GPU, like going from a 3090 to a 3090 Super Ti or something, or from a 3080 to a 3090. Then it's more understandable. But just to have a little RGB and a few more features, you can see how far out of whack that pricing truly is. And this isn't even until we get to sort of the scalper pricing. You'll be able to find that same GPU right now, sometimes for over $3,000. So basically twice the price that originally it was supposed to come out at. And certain GPUs that are very popular, for example with crypto mining, like the non-LHR 3070 or 3080, sometimes they'll go even for triple their original MSRP. That's why it's not a very sustainable system, at least in terms of the gaming market. Alright, so now let's discuss some ways that you can actually get a GPU before the end of the year. I think there have been a couple of really significant restocks right before the end of the year, and it makes sense that the companies will be holding on to their stock before Christmas. Traditionally, it's a season you don't want to make people upset if you have any control over, so perhaps they've been holding on to a little bit more just to release in time for the holidays and towards the end of the year, so they can get it into more people's hands than ever before, or at least the last several months. So let's talk about a few places that you can get a GPU. We'll mention some broad places that are easier access for most people, and then some places where you have to be a little luckier to live close to if it's a local store or something like that. So first, let's address some of the places that you really can't get it anymore. The EVGA queue for a long time was almost a gold mine for a lot of people that wanted GPUs. In fact, even multiple people were able to get multiple GPUs. Now, the EVGA queue is currently closed. Their idea is they want to get people that never got any GPU. So if you weren't in there already, you're not going to be able to get in until they reopen the process. It was a great system. The GPUs from EVGA mostly are going to be the cheapest you're going to find aside from the Nvidia Founders Edition, and they happen to be some of the best GPUs as well. So unfortunately, that's closed. Your next option, I'm not saying it's the next best one, but the Newegg Shuffle is one that's going to be available to everybody pretty much in the United States. It's going to be something that you can buy online. You don't need to live close to it or anything like that. You don't need to live near a store or anything like that. Newegg is going to be more accessible to more people in the country, sometimes even internationally. I'm not too sure globally how far they'll deliver, but at least in the US it's going to be more widespread. The Newegg Shuffle is interesting. For the most part, it's going to be a lot of highly priced bundles that you're going to have a chance at buying. They're not going to be worth it for the most part. Like, for example, the other day I saw what the Newegg Shuffle was. There were some bundles for like a RTX 3060, but it came bundled with some stuff you probably didn't want, like maybe a monitor or a power supply, or even worse, sometimes it's a motherboard that you don't really want. And that 3060 was going for like $900, where you could basically buy a cheaper one on eBay than having to do one of these bundles if you don't really need the monitor or the keyboards they include or the other items at all. So it's certainly sort of hit or miss, but if you sign up every day, once in a while there are some decent GPUs that pop up that actually make some sense. Like you may be able to get a 3070 or a 3080. Sometimes it's bundled with something that is at least reasonable you could theoretically use, or at least it's easy to sell the part you don't need. Like if you get a motherboard that's decent, you may be able to sell that off and just keep the GPU, or sometimes you'll get a monitor or something like that. But keep in mind, probably the better that the GPU is and the more in demand, the crappier the bundled item is, because then they know people are going to buy it anyway, so you might as well get rid of that thing that it's harder for them to sell. At least that's what I'm looking at here from when I look at their different bundles and things. And while most of the pricing with the bundle will be a little bit hefty, you're not going to be getting the best deal per se. If you're a gamer and you just need that last piece, which is your GPU, sometimes you may be able to actually come upon a decent enough GPU, and the price won't be outrageously more than if you bought the GPU alone, and often it may be a little bit cheaper than buying secondhand scalper pricing, but some of these bundles are so bad that you might as well just go to your friendly neighborhood scalper and get the GPU directly so you don't have to deal with selling a crappy monitor or something like that. So that's one thing to take note of. You can sign up for the bundle pretty much every day, and if you don't win, you're not really losing anything. And if you do win something and you kind of regret it, you don't have to buy it. It's just going to go to the next person if you sort of ignore that, that notification. So at least it's going to give you a chance at potentially getting an okay deal at one of these GPUs. Doesn't seem like there are any great deals, but just getting an okay deal and getting a GPU that's decent seems to be a little bit more than enough these days, I think. Another place that sometimes will have some GPUs at okay prices, it's also going to include bundles. It's going to be antonline.com, ANTONLINE.com, Ant, just like the animal, online.com. They generally will have some type of GPU bundles, mostly EVGA, where you're going to get power supply, you're going to get like an EVGA keyboard. Some of the pricing is only okay. Like, for example, usually a 3060 with the bundle will be like $699 to $720 in that neighborhood. Maybe a 3060 Ti, maybe upwards of, a little bit over $800. But typically, you'll have other items bundled in, like sometimes they'll bundle in like an Xbox Game Pass or something like that. I'm not sure how useful that stuff will be to you, if you can use the power supply or the keyboards, or maybe try to sell those separately from the GPU that you get. But it is an option to get a GPU, still a little bit under what a scalper would charge you. It's not that big of a difference when you're talking about these bundles with both Newegg as well as this antonline.com, but certainly it is a way to at least get a GPU if you really need it, even if you end up paying a little bit more than you really would want to. Now, other places to get a GPU that may be very tricky. Amazon, I'm not too sure if it's really all that reliable. It seems like anytime something goes up, the bots are really quick to be able to get it. So I'm not too sure if I can recommend Amazon. I don't know too many people that have been very successful at getting various GPUs. So I'll talk about some of the other places that I think people have a better shot. Definitely one of the biggest ones are going to be at Best Buy. Now, these are going to be both in-store as well as online drops. First, the online drops, which you can usually be notified of if you're following various, stock bots or on Discord or Twitter. Just search them up. You'll be able to find, there's so many, so it's hard to recommend a specific one. Something like GPU restock or something like that. Basically, they'll notify you when there's a stock drop happening on the Best Buy website. Often, it can be a little bit frustrating. It's going to make you wait a little bit saying verifying account, and then sometimes it errors out. Once in a while, people do get lucky and they're able to get through and be able to get a GPU. I know a lot of people have gotten GPUs through the Best Buy online drops. Certainly, it's no specific guarantee, but you can get lucky and it could actually make a difference. Doesn't hurt to try. So definitely something to, really try. The other thing with Best Buy, they do have, if you have a store near you, there are two ways this can actually work. Sometimes they'll have an in-person drop. Now, we know a lot of people lined up for the previous ones outside. That did cause a lot of weird issues, and people fighting in line. But if you were there early enough, certainly you were able to get a GPU a little bit easier than if you otherwise maybe try online or just try for a random drop. That one certainly will require the most physical effort, just because you're going to have to wait in line for a long period of time. If you get there at the end of the line, chances are you really won't be able to get anything. Now, another way that people have gotten GPUs from Best Buy, if you look a few videos back, I did a lot of the Best Buy sort of app little workaround or trick. Basically, you search for graphics card on your Best Buy app on your phone, and even though it may say out of stock or unavailable, if you toggle stock on and off, you should be able to see if that store at least possibly has a GPU. Something may pop up showing that the GPU may be there. It's still going to stay out of stock and unavailable, but recently this is how a lot of my viewers originally were able to get GPUs. Now, this isn't something I came up with. Basically, it's been around on Twitter. Only certain people knew it, but I do think after I shown it to light, made it a little bit more known, a lot of people were lucky in actually getting a GPU. So that's really the primary purpose here. If that type of information stays locked and secret, only a few people have access to it, it's not that fair in an already very difficult GPU market. So if more people know how to do these little workarounds, or at least the way to go to get a GPU, I think it's definitely going to be positive overall for everybody. Even if some people may want to keep the secret to themselves, I think it's better overall for the community, for computer hardware, gaming, and even crypto miners. At least that way, more people have a shot, especially smaller and enthusiasts, buyers of GPU will have a more fair shot at actually being able to get a GPU that they want. So basically, you just use the app, look, and you can kind of see if they have a GPU in store or not. It's not guaranteed. A lot of people may have trouble getting it, but enough people got through to know that it certainly works. And then, of course, we can't do a video on GPUs without mentioning Micro Center, which is basically my favorite store. Now, the caveat here is, and I know not everybody has a Micro Center near them. A lot of people will be like a 10 and 14-hour drive, but they have enough of them around the country on the East Coast and on the West Coast that it's fairly close, within an hour to 2-3 hours for, a decent amount of people. So it's not like it's one store out somewhere. They do have various stores across the country. So it's definitely very, very possible you can get a GPU from Micro Center. Now, they have drops just like Best Buy, but probably they're going to have them a little bit more frequently with their restocking. So I would just recommend ask what day that they restock. It might be on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Show up there early, and generally you may have a decent chance at a GPU. Recently, I did a video on a pretty massive restocking at a Micro Center store. They had 3090s, they had 3070s, the 3060s, pretty much all types of GPUs. And of course, they've been sitting on a lot of AMD GPUs because unfortunately those have been a little bit overpriced by a decent margin. Actually, not a little bit overpriced, but by a lot. But eventually, when people couldn't get Nvidia GPUs, they started selling those too. So I guess their strategy worked as the GPU shortage became worse. But Nvidia GPUs typically will be what people prefer to get for whatever reason, so they do have them come in occasionally. So that's somewhere that, although you can't buy online at all, you're going to have to physically go to a store. If you do, you definitely have a better chance than a lot of other methods to be able to get a GPU. For some people that live a little bit further, it may even be worth the trip to your closest store, at least to be able to see if you can get a particular GPU or not. Pricing is generally okay. I mean, all these GPUs do have higher MSRP pricing anyway than originally what it was, but at least you're going to be paying cheaper than paying a scalper, and you're getting it from a local store, and at least you might have a little bit more variety. So those have been the main ways this year. It's like, if you guys need more specific information than that, there really isn't. It's like you either try and get lucky or you don't try at all. So if people say this doesn't work or that, it just hasn't worked for you. But a lot of people have gotten GPUs through these methods, and it's still very possible to do so. Even this week, people got them at Best Buy and Micro Center. As I did my previous videos, I see the comments that come in. So don't give up. You just have to keep trying. Sometimes it may take a few weeks, a few months, but if you really look and you look in these correct spaces, these are going to be your best chances pretty much at getting a GPU. You don't need any type of insider knowledge or anything like that. You just have to be persistent and kind of look at these different retail spots whenever they restock, and just be at the right place at the right time. And if you look enough, probably every day you would have to either look online or maybe once in a while drive to a local store. Eventually, you'll get lucky and you'll be able to find one of these in stock. Alright guys, so let me know if you get lucky finding a GPU during the next few weeks by the end of the year, or if you've recently found a GPU. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.